prides himself in thinning out the congregation. He prides in being able to see people get up and walk out the back door and never come back again, because he says, now down to those who really want to be disciples. We don't go that far here. We gradually take a journey into this thing called discipleship. And today, Jesus has some pretty hard to swallow words. And you'll probably notice in the words here, particularly what he says about our family, that there's a bit of hyperbole in this, where he's kind of trying to make a point, and unless he makes a real pointed point, people don't think of it as something to take seriously. So starting the 14th chapter, the 25th verses following in the book of Luke, the cost of discipleship. Now large crowds were traveling with him, and he turned and said to them, whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and yes, even life itself, cannot be my disciples. This one is hard for us. I will tell you that if we stop and reflect upon our own families and those families that we know in our community, we know that we have a certain culture in our family, and it sometimes does not take us closer to being who we are called by God into what the family says is valuable. And Jesus is breaking through there. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost to see whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and it is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying, this fellow began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going out to wage war against another king will not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes against him with 20,000? If he cannot, then while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, none of you can become my disciples if you do not give up all your possessions. And salt is good, but salt has lost its taste. How can its saltiness be restored? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure heap. They throw it away, and let anyone with ears to hear to listen. The word of the Lord. The name is Team Sweaty Sheep. A ministry that's a part of the 1001 worshiping community started by the Presbyterian denomination, and I'm pretty sure that some of the money that goes into that was donated by Mrs. Walton, Sam Walton's widow. She donated $6 million for church development and growth a few years back. Well, sweaty sheep is really an interesting term. Think Jesus and sheep now. Now you're getting on board. And so it is that these people are unique in the way they come together to be the church. The vision for this new experience that these worshiping communities have is to get out of the stuckness that many congregations feel, where there's traditions of buildings and where there's traditions of the way we do Sunday school or worship or the ministries that we do, with altogether new thinking outside the box. And so we have people then moving into these new ministries, thinking outside the box. You might ask, well, who would become a sweaty sheep? Well, this particular group, and they've now expanded to Santa Cruz, California, with a little different slant. They, first of all, are people, they get sweaty at the fitness areas, or they go jogging and long and do marathons, or they ride bicycles at long distances, so they get sweaty, do they not, doing the things they already do. Now then, they also go out as they worship together, maybe in a park where they're resting from the bicycle ride, and into a worship service that gets them sent out to do ministry to other people. And they're not only getting sweaty for their own bodies and their own personal needs, but sweaty in the larger world. Swinging hammers at a habitat house, or going and cleaning up after a storm like in the Atlantic Ocean, the times that we've been into here. There's another one called the Farm Church, another Presbyterian church out in the eastern part of North Carolina. And they raise gardens. They have 6 acres. They farm it. They come together on their Sabbath, whatever day of the week that is for them, and they work in the garden. They worship God right where they pick the beans. Interesting, isn't it? And how do they draw people? They draw people who have special needs for food. They say, come on, you help us raise food, and take some of it home. And they do all kinds of ministry around to helping people to have food to eat. So in other words, in their words, their mission is to disciple, feed, teach, heal, welcome, and cross boundaries that most people say, that doesn't sound like church to me. So finally, the primary beneficiary of the new worshiping communities are not for just its own members, but for the community and the world. Oh, no. So, anyhow, these people caught this vision, and they keep attracting new people to it. Now, will it always stay that way? I don't know. But right now it is that way, and it can always transform into another kind of organism if it would like to, and maybe they'd even find a building to go and worship in. They might find a shelter on the days it gets raining on them. So we have read the same gospel message as we read today and as you studied in Sunday school today and discussed from this Lucan portion that we have. And today we are told that all that Jesus has taught the crowds still gather and grow larger every day. Now they seem to think that going to Jerusalem and following Jesus on his way to Jerusalem, there's going to be about getting his head crowned with a crown. And yes, he got it crowned all right, but with thorns and a cross. And they were sorely surprised. He teaches them that discipleship carries a high price tag if you truly are not just followers, but you're also disciples. The cost is high. When you sign on, you better be prepared. Any of you that's gone to recruiter to the military services, you'll get a sales pitch that shows how you can become stronger in body and you can travel the world. You can see all these things. They don't go into great detail about just how costly it is to body and mind and spirit as well. Just like sometimes in the church, we can join the church, some churches, and never understand what distinguishes our particular denomination from others to determine whether or not you really want to be a part of this organization. And it doesn't serve us well if we do not help people to understand thoroughly who it is that we are. Sometimes we bypass the whole thing of John Calvin, who was the forerunner in the Reformed traditions, and realized that he was run out of Geneva, Switzerland because he was too radical. He got this thing about Jesus, didn't he? And he tried to get too meddlesome in people's lives in those days because they'd been used to a whole different brand of religion than what he was bringing about. So Jesus demands commitment that was really unpopular in those days and even today. We sanitized Jesus pretty well through the years so that we can get people to come, because if we tell the whole story of how radical he could be, that was something else. There is a story that goes around for pastor nominating committees that the committee was trying to decide amongst 8 or 9 candidates, and they looked over one, and Peter, and he was too rigid, and he was always talking up when he ought to keep his mouth shut. And I don't remember all the pieces, but one of them was Jesus, and he was too radical. You don't want him up there tearing the church apart because of his radicalness. And they finally settled on one, Judas. He could take care of the money, and the church could grow because they'd get more money. And so, that's supposed to be a joke, but maybe that's what we do sometimes, is we think about the wrong things when it comes to selecting pastors and so forth. So it is, and Jesus, and yes, I tell you that while there is a cost to being a disciple, there is a cost that we need to know about if we do not become a disciple. So either way, it's a cost. It's a cost if we do not reach out to our fellow human beings and be something to our fellow human beings when they need what we have to offer. And we do or we don't. And there's a cost either way. At the same time, when we know that God is calling us to lead a hungry community of its spiritual, physical hunger, something slowly withers in our hearts if we're not doing it. Churches close all the time across this land in several denominations, not just our own, because somehow we have forgotten to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is what happens out beyond our walls. The sweaty sheep can attest to that, because they grow in numbers because people say, oh, they're like me, or I'm like them. I think I'll join them. I love to sweat. I love to build my muscles with riding bicycles. Sounds like good people to me. That one has a little limitation, because somebody who is not able to do physically what they do would find another worshiping community like the one I told you about a while back. The Wild Goose worshiping community in the mountains of eastern Virginia. In that situation, they had rocking chairs. They took all the pews out. For any of you who haven't heard me mention this, took all the pews in the church out and bought rocking chairs and put a big circle of them. And they have Appalachian music along with putting the hymns to Appalachian music. And they would rock. And they got the message in their rocking chairs. So, churches that do the best ministry in a hurting community become known for their specialty in ministry. And I'll tell you one that you know a lot about because they're in the news a lot around here, particularly on Channel 13 for this community, and that's St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Now, this is for the young people, the children, and our young teenagers. Who do they serve?
People who can't pay.
Huh?
People who can't pay.
Well, that's first of all. And what kind of people that can't pay? Children. Do they work with adults? They support the adults who love their children, but they research, they put all their money into research and all their money into bringing healing for the children who have real special needs that they can't get locally. How do they raise the money? You know people who have bought $100 tickets to the home that they give away, and lots of other ways in which they get money. And so what does their mission statement say? Their mission statement says, finding cures, saving children. Do you think anybody could remember that one if you really put your mind to it and not ever forget it? Yes. The answer is yes. Most of us in churches have mission statements so long that we have to go back and read and reread and reread to get the message. And we have the general idea, but St. Jude's has branded themselves to the point that everybody knows what they do. Do our churches do that? Not usually. It's a rare thing that I see a mission statement that people cannot remember. And one church I was in, they decided that their mission statement was so wonderful that they put it in a beautiful frame. And I said, you know, mission statements change from time to time. They said, but we have such a beautiful one, it'll never change. And they've been around since 1785. And they haven't changed a whole lot during 1785, although they do great ministry in their community. They have been able to do that. But please allow your ministry to be fluid so that as needs change, we can change with the need. If we're called upon to bring water to people who have no water, and all of a sudden nobody else needs water, do we keep bringing water when there's no more need? That's why we need to be willing to change. So, they count the cost of their mission, and they find ways to bring people in their presence. So St. Jude's creates partnerships. What does it take to give away a house? You got to have builders, you got to have subcontractors, you got to have Channel 13 and other television stations across the state. And you can go online and say, which house do you want to make a $100 donation to? Is it Paducah or Bowling Green or Owensboro? And they got partnerships everywhere. Have we thought about creating partnerships in our own community? We've talked about that some. And the neighborhood church book says you've got to build partnerships in this day. St. Jude's has figured that out. Do we figure that out? When we go into being a Matthew 25 congregation, which the denomination is attempting to pull us together in, we can talk to other people who are doing that. I called the very first one the other day that enrolled for that. Debbie's had a conversation with the pastor up there too, and you can't get off the phone with her because she's so excited. Do you want to be around people that are excited like she is, and like you are, on the number of things you're doing? This church has got pockets of doing some really great partnership. You do it with Boys and Girls Club, don't you? You do it with Habitat in Guatemala. We got a program for helping people in Guatemala and other places to have pure water to drink, so they don't have to take their children to the doctors that hardly exist in some of those mountainous areas. So what we're doing in our ministry study then is figuring out how we can create these partnerships. We're going today to be talking about the various areas where we've gone out and found what some of the needs are in the community. We don't quit doing what we're already doing that we really feel passionate about, but we find that narrow piece of the mission pie that we get deeply involved in. And people, soon enough, will find out if we're making a difference. I will tell you, we don't make a whole lot of difference if we hit lightly a good number of ministries out there and feel like we just can't make up our mind which ones, or we give a little bit to all of them. We make a deep impression into the areas of need in this community and in the world when we are very narrowly focused, and we put our efforts into that narrow area and we go deeply. We give money away to many people who can't pay their electric bill this month or their water bill, but we can take that same money and drive it deeply and help people rise up out of their deepest poverty if we focus what we do with people who we can really help. And we got agencies that can tell us where those people are that need what we offer. And we need what they offer to allow our spirit to rise up. So how does St. Jude's experience teach us then about ministry? It's greatly. We need to set about defining what our ministry is. They've defined theirs. And there's no change in theirs because there's probably never going to be a change in what little children and older children need. And they've counted the cost, and they prayerfully follow what their prayers offer up. We can learn too from the Sway Sheep and from the Farm Church and from the Wild Goose people over in the mountains who are all doing good ministry. And we're not going to tear the pews out, and we're not going to change some of the things that are dear to us, but we can learn how to create our own little in-house organization, and who knows what you might name it. But we can have people who are interested in one area and drive the need and the solution deeply in what the need is. And you can have a title for that where everybody knows what that is. You got ministries where you partnership already with agencies, everything from the school system to the literacy council. How do we not just go and do what we're doing, but expand more deeply what we can do for folks in those needs? So what about us? Can we be enthusiastic and committed to what we do because we have come together and discussed it and discerned together and come to be of one accord? With Christ, who said, there's cost to this discipleship. Come with me and I'll show you how you can do it.